is there's a very low voltage wire that goes into a sensor in the tank. And actually it's designed to be very, very low voltage for a reason, so it can't spark and blow the plane up. But apparently it is part of a larger harness that included things like, goes back to the fuel gauge. I think it was also, wasn't the cockpit voice recorder also on that same harness?
I think it was all on the same bundle, yeah.
And they were having issues with it also at the same time. They were having issues with the fuel gauge readings, and which made them think they had a short somewhere. And so essentially what it was, the thinking is that there was a breaker that should have shut off and prevented that all that extra voltage from that short from getting back into that low voltage wire in the tank. And apparently they discovered that breaker didn't shut down until kind of later than they thought it should have, which is how all that extra voltage got in there and sparked, created an arc, and then lit that off. So that's the thinking about that.
I understand that as well. I understand that theory, but they didn't test that theory.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know. Did they test that theory at all?
It doesn't sound like it to me, but
they probably should have.
I'll be honest. While I read a lot of the information that they put out, I didn't read it all. I don't think any normal human being in the month that I've been working on this could have gone through it all.
It's a lot. Yeah, I think like that the thing where they blew up the 747. I think what they were trying to just find out was this: if we light off the fuel in this tank, however we do it, is it going to be catastrophic enough to blow the nose off the plane?
And we're agreeing on that.
And I think that's why they did that particular experiment.
Right, which is fine. We're arguing that same thing. I'm just saying that they should have done the other one, because the other one is somehow more important.
You mean like testing that circuit to see if it could actually
that's more important to me.
Yeah, I agree. They must have. I mean, of course, this is the government, so I don't know.
Who knows? All right.
Well, let's move on.
Yeah.
Because that is the end of the official theory, or the story of it was truly an accident. So from here on out, we're going to a point, disregard some of the NTSBs putting out these theories or doing where and when. I'm not going to say when it's convenient, but when it suits them. I don't want to be, negative about this, but sometimes they're saying that what the NTSB said is wrong. Sometimes they're saying it's an outright lie. So we're just going to follow that path.
Yeah. So sometimes they're saying they're incompetent. Sometimes they're saying they're conspiring.
Yep. Yeah. There's collusion, all that kind of stuff. So theory number 2 here is that the plane was taken down, and it was taken down from a missile that was fired from land. And they say specifically, they speculate that it was done with something like a Stinger missile, which is the official acronym is the worst acronym ever. It's a MANPADS, a Man Portable Air Defense System.
I think that's a good acronym.
It's a shoulder-mounted rocket. That's the simple thing it is. But theoretically, that's something that can easily be brought to a location like the shoreline, fired, and then thrown into a bag and hustled away from the scene,
or
so that you would never know.
Like on a boat.
Yeah, I was thinking shooting it from a boat makes more sense to me.
Yeah,
I agree.
Well, the boat thing comes up in a different theory, but people say, well, who could have done this and why would they have done it? And there's speculation. Well, maybe this was like an early trial run on the part of Osama bin Laden or some other group that we angered.
It's not like it's a new idea. You remember in our Baron 52 episode, we talked about the Black September group wanted to take down an El Al jetliner in Rome Airport, and they had. Remember that?
Was that Baron 52?
I think so.
Yeah, that was, not Baron. No, not Baron 52. I'm sorry.
I'm wrong.
Argo 16.
Yes.
I'm getting
okay.
I'm sorry.
I was like, wait a minute. No,
right,
Baron 52 was Vietnam.
We're doing too many plane mysteries.
We are.
Stop.
No more plane
mysteries. This is flying off the handle.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Let's keep
but
going
anyway,
with this
that was the one where they actually got some black market missiles.
Yeah.
But the guy that delivered them didn't have a card, so they had to go buy some rugs and roll the missiles up in the rugs and transport them back to their apartment via the Rome subway system, rolled up in carpets.
That's right. That's
remember that one? Yeah.
Yep.
But so it's not a new idea.
No. But the problem with the idea here, if it was a rocket,
a MANPAD.
The problem with the whole thing is that there should have been at least an entry wound on the plane from where the rocket hit the plane. And because it's high energy explosive, there should have been melt, like we talked about before, that splatter or that slag. And officially, there doesn't appear to have been any of that. but some people say, well, that could have been hidden, and there's some ways that could have been hidden, and we're going to talk about those in a theory and a half.
Hidden by who? The government?
Well, since the government bodies were investigating it, yes.
Yeah.
Generally speaking.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to theory number 3. This is a different way that the missile was launched, and this is a missile from sea.
By sea.
But not with a guy on a boat with a Stinger rocket, but instead it was launched from a ship that would be carrying munitions like that, aka Navy or Coast Guard or somebody like that. And here's the thing, is that changes the kind of rocket. It also changes to a degree the requirement of that high energy explosive impacting the plane, because not all rockets are designed to contact with their target and then explode. Like, you want a fighter jet, you're not going to hit him. He's just too damn fast.
Yeah, it's better to
but if you blow up near him and throw shrapnel that's hot and fast all around,
put a cloud of crap in there,
you're
and
probably going to hit him with some of it.
It's going to kill his engine at the very least.
Right. So this theory is saying that the reason we're not seeing a massive entry wound from a rocket is because it was a high, high tech isn't the right word, but it's a sophisticated piece of munitions that exploded and threw this hot shrapnel, and one of these little pieces is what punched through the plane and punched into the center fuel tank, the center wing tank, and that is then what caused that explosion. That's what introduced the ignition source rather than that wire that we were discussing earlier. And the NTSB, they said, well, listen, it couldn't be a rocket because we didn't have any kind of trace evidence on anything that would support that. This maybe could be the reason why. There's some things that we haven't talked about, and again, this is something that's brought up in some of the documentaries, and that is damage done to I think it's the left wing of TWA Flight 800. The right wing, pretty well intact in terms of, it's broken, but the circumference of it was pretty well intact, whereas the left wing, the top surface of it was shattered, and the NTSB's official explanation was, listen, it was still full of fuel, and when it hit the water, there was hydraulic force that pushed the fuel that was still remaining in the wing tank, because there's 2 tanks, but pushed it through there, and that hydraulic pressure shattered the wing, and that's why that one's all broken up, whereas the other one came down in a different manner.
And so the left wing had more, the right wing didn't have any fuel in it?
No, I think it's more of, think of it this way, where it tore off from the plane, if that were to fall and land on that torn end first, then the impact with the ocean and all that hydraulic pressure upwards would have to go somewhere. But if the wing were to land at some kind of angle or flat, or with the front tip in, that's a different impact. So it's not, the hydraulic pressure is not moving through the length of it.
I see.
Okay. Yeah. Well, our conspiracy friends say, well, listen, that's obviously total bunk, because the only way that wing could have shattered that way is if the fuel inside of that left wing were to also have ignited. And if they were hit with some kind of rocket like this, it could have set off the center wing tank, but it could have also set off the fuel in that left wing, and that would account for that shattering.
Another question would be, wasn't it dumping all the fuel, while it was falling, but also then somehow, landed and the fuel exploded out?
Actually, I did, after I wrote up all of my stuff that we're going through tonight, I actually went back to the NTSB's report, and I started pouring through whatever specs I could get on the wing tanks. The wings hold up to 16,000 gallons of fuel. That's 60,000 liters. I had to convert that real fast. That's a lot of fuel. So in 40 or 50 seconds, if they were completely full when the accident happened, which I don't know that they were to the top full.
They were heading across the Atlantic.
But they're probably pretty
damn full. Yeah.
But it's probably not likely that it would have burned and lost all of the fuel in that 40 to 50 seconds. But it was
pouring out of it.
But it probably lost a great amount of it. So it does beg the question of, well, that's a lot of pressure to cause that. And even if the wing was only half full, that's
Would
still
it still
weird
clear out like that? Yeah.
that it would have that much shattering going on. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But, then again, I can see if it's half full, all that liquid's in the top, then it hits and it comes slamming forward with all that force and, maybe bust the hell
Hydraulic
out of it.
action does some crazy
It
things.
sure does, but
yeah.
I do think there are still some weird questions about it.
So another thing that our conspiracy theorist friends who are putting out the rocket from sea theory will point to is they will talk about the fact that, listen, and we've been talking about this whole time, is all these witnesses on land. But there are witnesses who were in the air at the time that this happened, and at least several of them saw the explosion of TWA Flight 800. At least one of them reported seeing this light streaking upwards and making contact with the plane. He's not in the NTSB's report. That's actually one of the major complaints, is that of all of these interviews that were done, a huge portion of them seem to have been omitted, and that omission, or that having been cut out, people point to as, well, they're actively tailoring things to fit the scenario that they created for what brought this plane down.
It's hard. That's always like a hard one for me. I think you shouldn't omit things, but you do have to only include the credible ones. Because when something this big happens, a lot of people just want to be a part of the story.
Do that.
And they want to say, oh yeah, I saw something.
Well, and also
Totally, I saw something. And it's like you have to deem if that report is credible or not. But also, you got to include most of it.
There are issues, though, with the way that the interviews were handled and the modification of witness statements. And we'll talk about some of this in our next theory. I think it's in our next one.
But the witness
But there are people who
statement-
say that, I never said that. I never said, that's not what I told them, and they're being cited in the reports. So,
Well, they summarized. They didn't quote them directly.
I
but
know.
The witnesses were all over the place. It's the problem. They,
figuratively and literally.
That's one reason you can't really have all that stuff in there, because it doesn't make any sense. When you cobble them all together, it makes no sense whatsoever.
It makes it very difficult. You're absolutely right. But that aside, what we still haven't figured out is whether this was launched from sea or from land. We still don't really see a clear reason why to bring this particular plane down. It doesn't seem to be a logic other than to strike fear into the United States.
Yeah, but of course the problem with that is that if it had been brought down by terrorists, they would have taken credit for it. Nobody did.
Right.
Yeah,
that is the odd part. Let's move to our next theory, and this is that it is a military mistake and cover-up. I think, and we talked about the fact that in the beginning, when we were talking about the civilian boats going to try to help, there were also military boats there in the area, and allegedly there was one military craft that was almost directly underneath the explosion. And it is seen on radar, supposedly. I can't read the radar tracks well enough to know this myself, but supposedly it leaves the area at high speed while everybody else is going directly to the area. So people say, well, obviously there was a ship in the area, and if it was one of ours, if it was a U.S. military ship, and it accidentally launched a weapon and brought down a civilian craft, well, no wonder they left.
Was this ship ever identified?
Not that I have ever seen. Here's the thing, and this bugs the holy hell out of me. We've talked about this before. These boats and these ships have lots of people on them working every day, and if the military were to have made a FUBAR like this, then you would imagine that they couldn't keep quiet over it.
How fast is 30 knots?
Not as 1 1/8 mile.
It's about 40 miles an hour.
Yeah, something like that.
That's pretty fast.
Yeah.
I just, if I saw a plane falling
straight down towards me, I'd boogie out of there.
Yeah,
But if you realize that you launched a weapon and then a civilian craft comes falling out of the sky,
I would also boogie on out of both reasons.
But after the fact, you would think that these people would feel a responsibility to say, listen, we screwed up in a big way, and the military has done this, and they've had to, they've been made accountable for it. There was...
No, it's, yeah.
I mean, it's happened before.
Well, it does happen. I mean, but you're playing with dangerous toys. There's going to be accidents.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, the whole thing is, none of these guys, I mean, the captain of this ship, the captain at the XO, these are not morons.
Mm-mm.
They're not like our typical criminals,
No.
They're not like thinking, oh yeah, if we just boogie out of here as quick as we can, nobody will ever figure out that it was us.
Yeah.
They're not like that, and
they're not 8 years old.
No.
Right.
So I could see them, like Devin says, getting the hell out. If there's a fireball directly above you, I could see them stepping on the gas and getting the hell out of there.
To save yourself.
But you're going to stop and come back.
Right, you don't hide. You don't just hope nobody will notice.
Yeah. Although I will say, on a bigger scale, if this was like a vast conspiracy that ranged, into lots of different organizations, it wouldn't be, oh yeah, we made a mistake, but we're going to get out of here. They'd be like, we made an attack that was ordered from the higher ups.
Yeah.
And we feel justified to take this plane down for whatever reason.
It could be that
we will be taken care of.
Yeah, it could be that if it was, I like this theory actually, that it's like, we're going to do this and then we're going to go out to sea and we're going to kill the crew and dump them overboard.
Or maybe it's a skeleton crew.
There's I'm sure they left non-essential
on...
personnel behind.
Yeah.
No sense killing 500 people when you can kill 400 instead.
Or
300 or 200.
It's very, the small crew. But, it could be like, well, listen, this is a covert operation. That's what this boat is for. It's a covert operation. There's a, mass terrorist on that airplane. We're going to take him out. There's going to be a few civilian casualties, but the, gain of life from whatever. I mean, whatever story is told could be there. I'm not saying this is a good theory, because I don't think it's a good theory. But I just think there are a lot. I can get there.
Well, and the thing is,
so easily.
If it truly was a military vessel that did it, then it would take a massive internal conspiracy on the U.S. government's part to cover that up. And that's what a lot of people are going on. And one of the things that really gets people going is the reported behavior of the FBI during the investigation. Because, like I said before, they don't normally investigate aircraft crashes like this. And a lot of people came forward after the fact and said there was some weird stuff early on in the investigation. Of course, what's happening is, they're getting the parts of the plane in to inspect and reassemble, and they start testing it for explosive residue to figure out, well, did somebody actually shoot this down? And they start getting pieces of the plane which are testing positive for explosive residue, so everybody freaks out, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Except then they decide to dismiss those findings because they say, well, listen, these parts of the plane were underwater for a couple of days, so there's no way they could still have the residue, so that must be, oh God, what is the word I'm looking for? It's cross-contamination from the military vessels that brought them back that, of course, would have munitions that would have that kind of residue on them.
Well, and also there were, at least some of the interior contamination was potentially at least accounted for the fact that they used that very plane for explosive training for dogs about a month before the accident.
Actually, that actually gets a lot of ridicule, because if you look at the timeline, that plane is sitting on the tarmac, it lands, and then within about an hour to an hour and a half, passengers are boarding and it's leaving again. So this is a very short amount of time to do a dog training exercise with nobody else on it, but apparently directly next to it on the tarmac for hours was a completely empty 747. So people say, listen, they were probably actually testing the other one, and they said they were in this one.
Well,
but even if that's the case, the thing was underwater for days.
That's part of it. But
and the residue shouldn't have been there.
Yeah, but as far as the explosive thing, too, it's not now even a very busy little 747 like ours, what we're talking about, has some downtime while they do maintenance on it.
Yep.
And which is a great time to bring your dogs and your bombs on board and do a little playing around. But like you said, too, it was also all this stuff was immersed for a long period of time. I don't know what kind of residue was left behind from a bunch of stuff burning on your plane. Not just the jet fuel, but, seat cushions and luggage.
Right, there's
and
soot
people
on
and
everything.
all kinds of nasty stuff burning. And that's going to leave some residue, too. I mean, not necessarily the same signature as an explosive.
Right.
But I don't know.
Well, and there at one point during their investigation, there's a whole to-do made of this reddish material that is found on the seats of the airplane.
That was chewing gum.
Yeah, so much chewing gum.
Yeah.
It officially was figured out to be the glue that the seat manufacturer used to adhere the fabric to the cushion. According to like I said, there's multiple documentaries. There's one that came